So thanks everybody for joining. This is our update session for accelerated breeding. We will, just to get us kicked off and get a little bit interactive, we'll have a warm-up poll, and then we'll hear a few remarks from our Senior Director on Breeding and Pre-breeding for 1CGIAR in Genetic Innovation, John Derrera. And then I will give a brief overview of accelerated breeding and a brief introduction, and then we'll get straight into some highlights from this year from looking at each of the work packages in accelerated breeding, so that you can get a sense of what has been happening this year and what some of the key highlights at the work package level are, and then we'll take the opportunity to get into some questions and take some feedback. And so with that, I will now throw it over to John Derrera for a few words. John, do you have slides that you would like to share?
Hi, Michael. I'm not sharing any slides. I'll just speak from my script here. Sure.
I'll just leave this. I'll just leave this up then and let you go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone, depending on where you are. I'll just say a few words about our Department of Plant Breeding and Pre-breeding. As you all may know, that Accelerated Breeding Initiative is a unit of the Department of Plant Breeding within the Genetic Innovation of 1CGIAR. Our vision includes building a long-term breeding programs with the core business of developing and delivering better varieties faster to the farmers and consumers. So in so doing, how do we get there? We are looking at building a plant breeding department that works and collaborates with other GI departments such as gene banks, breeding research services, strategy delivery and scaling, and also partnering with other external stakeholders along the value chain so that we can deliver higher rates of genetic gain, of course, in the form of farmer and market preferred varieties. What does this entail? This entails delivering climate resilience, improved agronomics, and quality levels that match the target product profile and address market segment needs, and also fitting in the production systems in the smallholder sector. It's part of our vision. This will maximize value for smallholder farmers and sustain accelerated rates of varietal adoption. I can also emphasize the importance of pre-breeding in our department. We need pre-breeding actually to sustain performance of breeding pipelines. So as a result, we need to continuously discover and deploy new traits faster to the breeding pipelines so that they'll be able to continuously derive new varieties that will go to the farmer very, very quickly. So we'll work and deliver better products faster through collaboration with partners in the CGIAR breeding networks and also with the private sector platforms. What we are currently doing now, we are setting up the department, collaborating also with other departments and initiatives to making sure that we are all aligned and connected in this business. So we are looking at establishing partnerships with commercial SMEs and also international companies along the value chain. We are also looking forward to make sure that we organize our breeding programs and our business model such that it will be impactful and focused, plus integrating a culture of continuous improvement in all aspects of the business. So accelerated breeding initiative is very important in this regard, as it plays a role in driving our breeding innovation and modernization approaches that we're going to be employing to be able to deliver on our core business of delivering better crop varieties faster to the farmers and consumers. So I'm looking forward to very interesting discussions this afternoon. Over to you, Michael.
Great, thanks very much for that, John. I'll just bring my screen back up. and I'll get right on into it. So thanks very much. That's really very useful. I'll get now right into a bit of an overview and introduction, just a very high level introduction into accelerated breeding, the initiative. So what is accelerated breeding? It's a 1CG initiative for breeding within genetic innovation action area, and our aim is so that programs deliver higher rates of genetic gain, providing farmer preferred candidate varieties with a step change in performance. So that step change means that it's really it's a change in performance that is really enough to be driving adoption. It's not just incremental, but really able to drive adoption, and that we see a change in the rate of turnover of varieties, and ultimately a reduction in the average age of varieties in farmers' fields. And so, of course, to deliver these higher rates of genetic gain, though, the breeders will be working hard on the breeding process itself and on how they're doing the breeding, so that they're able to deliver those higher rates of genetic gain. And the output of that work will be modernized CG and NAS breeding programs that have had their capacity augmented, that the changes have been implemented into those programs, so that they're breeding differently, making better use of technology and tools, etc. And for the lead, myself and Claire Mukankusi. Okay, so we have 5 work packages in accelerated breeding. We've got Refocus, Reorganized, Transform, Discover, and Accelerate. And many of you, of course, will be very familiar with these 5 work packages. And for those of you that are not, you are going to, the best way for you to become familiar is for us to get right into what the progress has been in each of these areas, in each of these work packages over the last 12 months. And from there, you'll get a good sense of what it is that we're doing in each of these work packages. Okay, so genetic innovation as an action area and the initiatives within it it's a very well integrated action area, where the initiatives are really very well integrated with one another to form, to come together collectively, so that we have impact at the action area level. Any one of these initiatives on their own really can't achieve a lot. I mean, we just take accelerated breeding. I mean, once the breeding is done and the candidate varieties are developed, if it doesn't ultimately get pushed through the seed sector, the seed system, to ultimately end up in the hands of farmers, then we don't have impact. And you could say vice versa, and you have to have the variety in the first place. And of course, we need the inputs from market intelligence, from breeding resources, and of course, gene banks provide invaluable genetic variants. And so we're all very well connected and interrelated. And accelerated breeding pursues effective interactions with all the other initiatives within genetic innovation. And in particular, just to get more specific about it, at a work package level, Refocus is working really very closely with market intelligence, Reorganized with breeding resources, Transform, which is all about the partnerships with NAS and NAS CG networks. So you'd expect is working across all of market intelligence, breeding resources, and Seed Equal, and of course also with the crop stand hunger investments that have been coming through are very important for this work package also. Discover is working closely with breeding resources and gene banks, and Accelerate is really the meat of the initiative. It's where the breeding is done, and so they're working closely with breeding resources, Seed Equal, and of course with very closely with or benefiting from the funding that's available through crop stand hunger. So that's just a very, very high level description of the initiative. And so now I'd like to get into the work packages. I will present the first one on Refocus because Peter Coldrake, I think, is on leave, or I understand is on leave right now. So I'll present this one. Okay, so Refocus is really about restructuring breeding pipelines to be in better alignment with market segments. And so before diving into the work that we have within this work package, we really need to understand what our starting position is. And so we have now, for the first time in CG history, taken stock of the whole CG breeding efforts, the full portfolio across the whole system. This is across 21 crops and forages, 7 centres which are serving CG regions through 35 breeding networks with NARS and SME partners. Across all of this, there are 340 target product profiles, and there are 119 breeding pipelines aligned to 271 out of a total identified 428 sub-regional market segments. And so this is quite quick and easy just to rattle off, but I mean, what this provides for quite a number of different ambitions is just really invaluable information to have these this full portfolio pinned down and to understand how they relate, how these pipelines relate to the product profiles, how they relate to the market segments being served. But there is still work to be done within that space, and so the work that is still ongoing and coming up is that the breeding teams, and supported by Peter Coldrake, the breeding teams themselves, are reviewing pipeline structures and links to market segments and target product profiles by crop. So what do I mean by that? I mean, well, if once we have a better understanding of what each pipeline is really breeding for, then it starts to become clearer where there are gaps and overlaps. It starts to become clearer where there are multiple pipelines perhaps pursuing very similar target product profiles, or indeed where there might be pipelines that are just trying to do too much and trying to deliver quite different target product profiles from the same gene pool, which can be very challenging. So the job to be done there is to review them and see how the structures can be optimized. Linking pipelines to breeding schemes. So when it comes to optimizing these breeding schemes, we want to really understand. We want to understand those breeding schemes in the context of the target product profiles being pursued and the market segments being served. Updating information on pipeline investment levels. This is where we're wanting to really understand, taking the market intelligence that comes from the market intelligence initiative to get a better understanding of what the projection of benefits, or what the potential for benefits are, and that's what I'll talk about towards the end there. But and then linking that with, well, how much investment is actually going into these various breeding pipelines. So we're trying to understand investment levels on a pipeline basis. Capturing feedback from staff and partners for increased accuracy. So we need to be updating this information and consistent understanding of terms and concepts. And some of this, for example, capturing feedback from staff and partners is I mean, this is done in collaboration with, obviously, with market intelligence and with seed equal as well. And just to try and make the link with market intelligence, because there is a very strong link there with this one. From market intelligence, and the information that we get from them will improve our understanding of market segments and insights from farmers and markets, and to make a target product profile design a institutional, cross-disciplinary effort, and we'll understand the projection of benefits, as I've just mentioned earlier when I was talking about linking that with the pipeline investment levels. So that's Refocus, and next I'll throw it over to Sarah Hearn to talk to us about the next work package, Reorganized.
Thank you, Michael. Good day, everybody. Nice to be able to have this conversation with you today. So within Reorganized, we're focusing on not the science per se, but more how we better organize breeding to make sure we can effectively deliver against the objectives that we've all set ourselves. So where we've been working in Reorganized over this last year, the main component, really the bread and butter there, is to develop a stage plan that is not only coherent, but has a level of consistency, adopting common terminology and stage definition. Now, this does not sound like rocket science. However, without having this underlying framework, it generates a lot of confusion and conflict, which is unnecessary. So we've been working with a number of individuals from across the breeding programs to develop this stage plan. And that has been presented to the breeding program leads and to GI senior leadership and has been endorsed and approved. And you can see a quick diagram of this here. The parts that are in the bold colors really documents the breeding stage plan that we will use across ABI. And then obviously there are touch points which reach back up to market intelligence, to seed equal, to gene bank and other initiatives within the structure. We've also formed a number of working groups that can then really build out from this stage plan. And these groups represent multiple commodities, geographies, different centres. And the first activity that we've been engaging with is really documenting this breeding stage plan further. So starting to detail inputs and outputs of each of these stages, including importantly the mapping of human resources. What are the various skills that are currently deployed within each of these stages, and looking forward to what would be an ideal state. Really as a way to better document whether we're utilising the excellent skills and capabilities across the systems and centres as effectively as we could be. Then we come to looking at the common stage gates. So in the diagram here, they're marked out as those little red triangles. And really to define, not per se what they are and be prescriptive, but to identify those stage gates which are common across the breeding programs and try to look at documentation of consistent targets, looking at the inputs into those particular stage gates. So what data are you using to help make decisions, and to make sure that we have documentation of clear handover criteria or stop or go points, depending on what the particular stage and handover point is. Moving on from that, and obviously linked again with the stage plan, really working towards not only the definition, but the real use of RACI. So responsibility, accountability, consulted and informed matrix. So that teams and individuals working within breeding have a very clear understanding of what their role is within a particular stage. And obviously people can work across stages, and linked with that to have a very clear framework for decision making, so that the decision making process is transparent, and together these entities we hope will empower and democratize the work across the breeding programs, reflecting the value and skills of different disciplines and the teams therein. And finally, within the working groups, we're working towards the definition of KPIs. Now, KPIs obviously exist currently. It's not recreating the wheel, but really focusing on those KPIs which appropriately account and measure breeding performance, whether that's breeding program performance per se, and equally the performance of individuals and teams working within the breeding programs. And here the focus is on both leading and lagging KPIs to make sure that we're appropriately assessing performance at the end of the stage, and that we are able to assess performance moving through the breeding stage plan so that we can adjust course if needs be. Now, across all of these areas, we have been establishing a current state. So we've been conducting some baseline surveys so that we know where we are in all of these particular stages, so that we can assess the performance and then move towards a more ideal state as we define that as we move throughout the implementation of this particular work package. Next slide, please, Michael. Okay, and on to Discover. So we've jumped from work package 2 to work package 4 here. So Discover really focuses on the trait discovery and trait deployment activities, formerly known as pre-breeding. We've purposefully avoided the use of that term within accelerated breeding due to a lot of misinterpretation or very broad interpretation. So within the Discover area, we have surveyed all ongoing trait discovery and deployment activities. So we now have a portfolio across crops and forages that detail not only what projects are being conducted, both within the initiatives and within bilateral projects, but which detail further the trait focus, the purpose of the particular work, and the market or geography that is targeted. Now, when we reflect this looking at publications alone, there are a very large number of trait discovery and deployment activities across the CG breeding programs. So we have a lot of projects that are focusing on publications, focusing on discovery, focusing on new screening approaches, new phenotyping approaches, publications that reflect the validation and deployment. Now, when we look at this in the project side, we tend to have pretty much equal projects looking at discovery and looking at validation. The difference in publication is really what is the sexy science that people want to publish at the end of the day. The focusers work pretty much predominantly looking at biotic stress, or that's the majority of the projects looking at biotic stresses, with then a series of projects looking at abiotic stress, heat, drought, flooding, etc. And then some projects that really look at end use and quality related traits. So the work in progress, we've currently got some activities on the go where we're trying to get a better grip of estimation of return of investment of these different investment cases, and also exploring what are the opportunity costs potentially there to do different activities or to adjust that portfolio. So we've been working with market intelligence and Refocus to establish an initial process to not necessarily directly quantify, but to estimate the value of traits within this context. We've been primarily aligning the existing documented trait discovery and deployment projects with the existing target product profiles. And yeah, unsurprisingly, there are some traits that are listed in those projects that don't exist in target product profiles. And that may be a misarticulation of the trait itself. It is possibly not captured fully in a target product profile, which may describe a characteristic as opposed to a trait, but we're trying to drill down further into that, and we'll be having conversations with the breeding programs directly. The majority of traits do map, which is great news. We've been executing an initial expert estimation of trait value. So this isn't directly going out and measuring the value of a potential trait. It's using the existing knowledge and information within the systems to be able to estimate a value. So an expert best guess. And we're really focusing on those traits at the moment that contribute to yield stability or yield potential. Because right now that's where we have the most information underpinning the market segments to be able to scale and estimate a value to productivity. We've been starting to work to standardize and improve our ability to cost trait discovery and deployment activities. And we've got a working group together with breeding resources to focus on documenting that further. And finally, similar to the reorganized space, we have working groups that have been defined, again, cross-commodity, cross-sector, that are really starting to build out on expanding the trait valuation space, improving the cost assessments, focusing on best practices and feasibility within the Discover space. And here, this is not to prescribe particular practices, but more to provide a decision-making framework so that we can, in a transparent manner, document what a particular practice options may be to a specific substage gates so that we can move that forwards. And with that, I'll hand over to Bish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. So my name is Bish, and as Michael mentioned, I'll share some of the highlights from work package 3 of ABI. So it's called Transform. And as many of you are aware, Transform is focused on building stronger, more collaborative, more inclusive breeding networks. So making sure the collection of institutes and individual organizations, whether it's a national program, seed company or a university, and the CGIAR center tackling a particular market segment are working in a more cohesive and inclusive manner, so that we don't have a multiple duplicate efforts targeting the same market segments. So in order to do that, the first thing we had to do is obviously map out all the partners that are participating in the various CGIAR crop breeding networks. So this is the first time I believe this has been done. It's been done in a very systematic and thorough way. So each of the breeding networks has been approached and they've been asked to provide a list of all the partners they've been working with. And the results have been quite astounding. I mean, I've been working in this area for about 4 years now, previously with EIB, but even I was surprised by some of the information that came through. I think the CG overall, across all the various breeding programs, we're working with over 1,000 individual partners, so 1,200 partner organizations covering 135 countries in the world. So the scope of the work is enormous. I think the reach that we have as an institution is massive. So amongst these partners and the countries that are covered, all the low and middle income countries where CG crops are relevant have been represented. Apart from the global south, we also do have a lot of connections with countries in Europe and Australia and North America. So we having reach globally, which is, I think, often not very well recognized. In terms of partnerships, all the different crop breeding networks, the type of partnership obviously depends, alters based on the type of crop. Hybrid crops predominantly have a lot of private sector participation. Some of the clonal and self-pollinating crops tend to have mostly national program or university partners. But overall, almost a quarter of partners are from the private sector. And again, I think that's fantastic news. It shows we're really working in a more commercially driven way and trying to align with groups and bodies that have the expertise to deliver and make sure the seed that is being developed ultimately gets into farmers' hands. 15% of the collaborators of the partners are universities. So again, a very interesting finding there, a lot of scope to help the next generation of plant breeders come through. And over 50% of the partners are national programs, as we would expect. In 2022, another major deliverable from Transform has been this establishment of a working group. So we're very, very lucky and privileged to have a group of about 30 staff. They've all been nominated from the different CGIAR centers. I see many of them on the call today, so it's very nice to see you all, and thanks for your participation in the Transform Network Coordinators Group. We meet on a monthly basis, and our task is to implement the Transform work plan which was jointly developed by many of you and us as ABI last year when we were developing the work plans for the initiatives. So we meet on a monthly basis. The network coordinators group are supporting us to implement the work plan at each of the various institutions. We also do have a core team that's dedicated just for managing the transform work, and they're providing support to the 30 coordinators. I'll just quickly give a shout out to them because they've been doing a lot of the heavy lifting and making sure this work is going through. So Dragan Milic is based in Nairobi, and he coordinates activities in Eastern Africa and provides support to breeding networks in Eastern Africa. Lenin Muzundire provides support in Southern Africa. Bodo Trognitz and Vish Banda provide network support in West Africa. And Sanjay Katiyar provides network support in South Asia. So they're doing a fantastic job. And once again, we're very grateful to the 30 staff who've been nominated from the various centers to be involved in this work as well. We did have, as Michael alluded to earlier on, a major stakeholder meeting in June this year in Nairobi, where we had representatives from many NARs and SROs in Africa. So SROs are the sub-regional organizations. So we had 22 deputy director generals. We had directors of research from the 3 major SROs, the 3 major crop improvement universities were represented, as were representatives from the donors, from the Gates Foundation, from GIZ Online, and from GI leadership, including Sonia, John, Michael, Ian, Sharifa, and so on. So this was a critical meeting that we had in terms of bringing alignment and trying to understand from our key partners what is required to build a more inclusive and effective breeding network. And some of the key things that came out of those discussions was strategic alignment, fair attribution to recognizing the work that different partners are doing, and the need to have clear roles and responsibilities for the various partners that are participating in these breeding networks. So that led to the development and signing of an aid memoir, which is available online, and it provides the vision for us going forward. So very quickly, so building on that meeting and the aid memoir, in order to ensure we have strategic alignment and ensure roles and responsibilities to network partners are effectively delegated, we are currently going through an exercise of going through strategic documents from about 80 national programs and sub-regional organizations. So to try and understand what their priorities are, to make sure we can find some common ground between what one CGIAR and GIA is trying to do and the strategic objectives that have already been defined by many of these national programs and sub-regional organizations. So Nina Jacobs has helped us assemble a huge collection of these strategic documents that we're going through. And using the network coordinators group, we're also conducting a high-level survey of each of the individual partners in the breeding, in the different breeding networks to understand what their current activities and capacity is, so that we can work towards allocating clear roles and responsibilities aligned to their comparative advantage. And finally, as we move forward into next year and the year after, we're continuously looking at more effective ways of germplasm development and collaborative models. We're not starting from scratch, of course. We're building on excellent work and good examples that already exist in the system. So we're taking stock of current collaborative approaches. We're trying to ensure there's alignment across the various initiatives, particularly CDQual, gene banks, market intelligence. And we're already starting with a few networks to start piloting approaches for joint priority setting. So making sure priority setting, reviewing and endorsing market segments, and so on is more inclusive, and we have stronger interest from partners. So with that, sorry if I've gone on for a bit, Michael, I hand it to you to accelerate work package 5. Thank you.
Sure, thanks very much, Bish. Okay, so accelerate is really where the meat of the initiative is. It's where the rubber really hits the road, and it's where the breeding is done. It's where the the breeding programs get optimized. And so Bojar, Raj Basnet, and Dorcas Gemenet have been leading this, or Eduardo previously before he went on to Erie, and now Dorcas and Bojar. Dorcas has got some background noise, so I'll throw it to her just at the end to make any additional comments, but I'll present here. But this work has been taking place with over 60 breeding programs, and what we classify as the program is where a breeding team that is focused on one or a number of pipelines. There's some teams that are focused on a number of pipelines, and there are in total, pardon me, 119 breeding pipelines. So the insights that we've got so far on the progress are that there's quite a lot of development of highly elite candidate varieties that have gone out from this work this year. There's quite a lot of work going on in terms of implementation of genomics supported rapid cycle recurrent selection schemes. We're seeing that there's quite a lot of activity in terms of the application of genomic selection, and this is rapidly increasing. We're now at a point where there's over 30% of all breeding pipelines are applying genomic selection, and several crops report quite high, quite accurate predictions between the measured and predicted values. And going forward, there will be a focus on mainstreaming best practices among the many lessons that are learned across crops. I mean, there's such a rich opportunity to learn from what's happening across crops and to benefit from that. In terms of optimized breeding pipelines, there's been a lot of progress in terms of crop-specific quantitative genetic studies to optimize pipeline simulations. So well, not just for the purpose of optimizing the simulations, but for the purpose of optimizing the pipeline. I mean, there's been a lot of really valuable simulation work done, but that simulation work really means nothing if you don't have really good data as input to really understand your variance components, your heritability, or the level of G by E that's experienced, etc. So there's been a lot of work to better understand those input variables, and that's really important for getting good simulations and getting good data in terms of that you can use for decision making for optimizing the breeding scheme. And going forward, I mean, there are many opportunities to continue optimizing further, to look at better parental selection, driving down breeding cycle time even further, these sorts of things, and having alignment of the breeding scheme with the target product profile traits. And this is captured in Breeding Pipeline Manager, a tool for that purpose, and to really make sure that putting the target product profile front and center when it comes to development of the trialing scheme and looking at selection intensities, etc. In terms of optimized pipeline structure and germplasm sharing, I mentioned in Refocus that there's the intention to look at do a revision of the pipeline structure and how they're targeting target product profiles. And the result of this will be pipelines that are really very targeted and very focused on very specific market segments. And from a quantitative genetics perspective, it's going to be really important to make sure that genetic diversity is managed. And so looking at how to manage that diversity, and in the context of these revised pipeline structures, and having, for example, formal approaches in place for sharing of germplasm between these various pipelines. And going forward, there'll be the need to fully or to rationalize pipeline structures together with Refocus. I mentioned that earlier, and like I said, develop those germplasm sharing plans across centres, programs, and with NARS, and that builds upon those crop-specific diversity studies. To have farmer and market relevant variety identification schemes. So there's been a lot of progress here in terms of the majority of crops have assessed progress and or genotype by environment interactions vis-a-vis distinct farmer or market relevant traits. There have been over 12 crops that are experimenting with improved or moving into increased and improved on-farm trialling approaches. For example, using the tricot method, but also others are using other methods as well. And this is really important and an important output for this initiative to look to have more relevant selection both of parental lines and of candidate varieties. And going forward, again, there'll be a focus on having greater alignment with target product profiles and having larger scale, lower cost testing approaches, capturing, and this is across on farm, but also in terms of more farmer relevant managed on research station trials, and including capturing gender specific differences. So, and then finally, in terms of the progress that the crop teams have been making is also in terms of systematized genetic gain assessment and prediction across crops. So the majority of CG crops have assessed yet again the genetic gains in one or more several pipelines. There was a huge effort last year in this space, and we presented this through one of the Crops 10 Hunger meetings, and we need to, and this needs to be. There's been another huge effort this year to get the next year's data point calculated, and that will be presented shortly, and also will come through hopefully in the presumably in the reports that we're putting together now for this initiative. An important insight is that realised genetic gain has been statistically significant and positive in 74 out of the 134 studies. And going forward, we need to continue to monitor the increases as breeding approaches are changing. I mean, we're implementing many changes, and of course to also calculate predicted genetic gain, which will be a component of monitoring those increases more in real time, so we can calculate what the changes will be expected to be as a result of any changes, for example, to the breeding scheme. The Accelerate team have developed a work plan and have a cadence of regular engagement with crops at centre level, both one-on-one and as a crop, where we've begun some crop-specific deep dive discussions on these specific topics for optimisation. So far, we've done this with banana and plantain, potato, sweet potato, cassava, ITA, and the maize programs, and there are more upcoming. Looking at standardising tools, methods, and approaches, for example, genetic gain calculated using standardised methods for all pipelines, and we've from a baseline survey which we've put out, we're looking at the progress on work plans, trying to understand the challenges, priorities, and support. We received 43 responses from 19 crops so far, and we're collecting the top 3 priorities identified by each of these programs. So anyone that is interested in this can get in touch with either the programs directly or with us. And in terms of breeding optimization support, we're working with the QG team, Dorcas and their team, and the latest examples of this have been application of F1 hybrid prediction model in yam, use of desired gain index, estimated realised genetic gains, training breeders on the application of quantitative genetics in breeding programs. And so they're and we're actually quite over time, but Dorcas, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Thanks, Michael. I don't have much to add, but I would like to congratulate the teams for the tremendous progress we have seen through this period, and to sincerely appreciate the high motivation to make changes within the pipelines. And as we look into the future, I am excited to say that many interesting opportunities as well as interactions are in the pipelines, and to reiterate that, as always, the Accelerate support team is at your service to work with you in this journey. Thank you very much, and back to you, Michael.
Great, thanks, Dorcas. And okay, so in terms of contacts and information flow, I'll try and run through this pretty quickly since we're so far over time. We do have many accelerated breeding contacts at the work package level, and at the within each crop we have multiple contacts at the work package level, and we've got a crop lead for each crop. And communication and planning is done through these contacts. And for the crop teams to be aware of this, and you really are urged to reach out to these centre-based and crop-based contact points or work package leads to understand better what is happening. And the use of best practices for sharing information across teams to be implemented, and including to use the Project Management Centre, the PMC tool that has been developed and provided from Scriptoria. In terms of accelerated breeding comms, we've got an expanded website. We do have the luxury, and unlike many initiatives, I mean, a lot of this work, similar to the Breeding Resources Initiative, a lot of this work builds upon work that has been done by Excellence in Breeding. And so we do have the Excellence in Breeding site and social media, has events and tools, news, etc. So we are leveraging that opportunity, and so you can continue to use that site. And we've got a client survey coming similar to what we did to what Excellence in Breeding did a couple of years ago. And we've got this coming together with Breeding Resources to follow up on the survey done a couple of years ago. And with crop leads, Accelerated Breeding has been chairing regular crop lead meetings to discuss progress, and obviously John, as the senior director, is a main contact, and also I can be a contact on the initiative level here as well. So with that, I wrap it up, and if we do have a couple of minutes for questions. I've got this slide here just to finish up on, because really this initiative is about working with you. It's about working with people to drive change in breeding programs. And with that, I will close it off and maybe throw it over to you, Adam, to manage questions. Thanks.
Sure. We have a minute or two if somebody wants to. Oh, we do have a hand raised here by Tedesi. So Tedesi, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Michael. This is a very nice summary. My question is, if we can have a standardized procedure, the way it has been calculated for genetic gain, this is just for the selection index and for the costing structure development. So if we have a standardized protocol methodology, a software, then it would be very much easy for us to report the objectives for the selection index. And also for the costing structure, by plot basis, by machinery basis, by trial basis, how have you, but it should be standardized based on locations and geographies. We can update from our side. The other is from the on-farm trials. I'm not sure if we all have a common understanding of the on-farm trials. Most of the on-farm trials, they have been carried at nurse level for varieties when a variety is a candidate. That is where they make on-farm trials, along with the previous checks, the recent candidates for verification. So we are just reporting data for on-farm trials, such of a type. So do we have really a common understanding? What do we mean by on-farm trials for varieties? Because the national programs, they adopt on-farm trials when it reaches at variety verification or variety registration trial level, whereby they just compare previous checks with the new candidates. So where are we in that direction? The other is in the genomic selection also. Do we have a common understanding at which stage we apply genomic selection, the platforms we are using also, and the models? There are different models. So if there are standardized protocols that can be shared, it would be very much helpful. Also, the speed breeding facilities. I mean, speed breeding, as you know, is just how to shorten the breeding cycle, which can be done by a single seed descent approach, or a shuttle breeding approach, or a double haploid approach, or the speed breeding proper that we are talking about. So if there is a standardized model which we need to follow, that would simplify the life of the breeder. Thank you so very much.
All right, thanks. I'll try and be very quick. So yeah, taken on board that a tool for selection index would be useful, and that's exactly the sort of thing that Breeding Resources can help with. I mean, developing tools such as that is what they're there for. And so we can pass that on. On-farm trialing, sorry, I'll try and be very fast. on-farm trialing, yeah, I mean, ultimately the important thing here is that we're capturing performance under farmer conditions, under farmer managed conditions, so that it's all about relevance here. And so the important thing is that it's happening, that we understand that we're measuring ourselves, our genetic gain, against what is happening on farm, not is happening on a research farm, which may not be so relevant. And if the earlier in the pipeline that we can bring that selection, the better, because then, I mean, the earlier we're making more relevant selections. So that's on farm trialing. So in terms of understanding what it is, it's really about relevance and being as close as possible to what the farmer is seeing, which of course is very different from farm to farm, which makes it difficult. But collectively, we're trying to get that understanding, which is possible. Genomic selection, I mean, it's in terms of which stage, I mean, basically genomic selection, the earlier you can apply it, the better. I mean, that's the idea of it. I mean, there's no point, I mean, once you've got good phenotypic data, the value is less. In terms of standardized protocols, I mean, each crop, this is where we need to work with each crop to understand where they're at and what's possible. I mean, how this gets done in a clonal crop is going to be very different to how it gets done in a cereal crop, like you're working with, like wheat. So, yeah, I mean, we can continue to work with each of these respective crops to try and understand what your specific opportunities are for achieving these standardized goals. But no, it's some good insights and questions. Thank you. Any last question? We are a little over time, but which I apologize for.
Michael, if you did want to take one more question, Gary
Sure.
Atlin asked, have we defined generic roles for CG teams versus NARS in the networks, and do we need to? And I think that's probably Bish's territory. So this could be our last question, and then we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, Bish, I don't know, I'll let you take that while you're turning your mic on. I think it's important to first understand what their, for each individual team, what their specific comparative advantage is, what their ambitions are, and I know what you have in mind here, Gary. And yes, I mean, a lot of this is part of what we're trying to achieve through Accelerate and moving to genomic selection schemes and faster breeding cycles, etc. But working with the NARS to look at, well, what can they do to support us moving in this space, or to support the network, not us, to support that breeding network to move faster in that space. Bish, do you have? Are you able to?
Yeah, well, not much more to add to that, Michael. I think that's where the money is. It's making sure we align to their comparative advantages, and every NARS is at a different level, so every NARS might have a slightly different role to play in the network. In a generic terms, we do understand they're much closer to the market, so they would be the source of market information and product placement. But some NARS are quite capable of running breeding programs, and then they might have more elevated roles in certain breeding networks. But yeah, let me stop there, Michael. Back to you.
Yeah, and in terms of a model, Gary, I mean, yeah, we need to. There's, as you know, we've got to. This needs more time and attention than what we can give to here, and we acknowledge that, and we'll do that. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Really appreciate it. I know that you're all really busy. I hope this has been helpful, and if there are other questions, just reach out to the various contact points, to the WEC package leads, to myself, to John, to try and understand things better if there's anything you'd like to understand better. So thank you very much, and thanks to Adam and the team for all their hard work to put this together. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.